So there's basically one warning in this, and it's basically just alcohol and drinking. So if you are triggered by this, please do not listen and go listen to something else. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy. Dabi mumbled under his breath, continuing to curse out the small group he had met with the only moments before. He was already regretting joining this league of villains. He entered their current hideout alongside an actual child. A demented blonde girl who seemed to idolize the hero killer Stain. The leader himself was just as much as a child. At the motives of Stain by the blonde girl, he immediately began complaining about their presence and attempting to attack them. Miraculously, mainly due to the weird portal guy that was behind the bar, they all managed to leave the meeting unscathed. Now the sun had set, and the sky had darkened, and Dabi had to figure out what to do next. It wasn't like he was about to go back to his home. He was practically out to normalize as it was, and woke up only a couple of hours ago. He had no specific regulations of the night. Maybe he would mess with the heroes that patrolled Kamino just because. His planning was interrupted by a sudden sound, filling his ears in the quiet streets of his stomach growling. "Damn, I'm hungry," he mumbled. Dabi finally decided to look around the empty sidewalk for any sign of an open restaurant. It wasn't too late, but this section of the town seemed to be lacking in any form of restaurants. He'd probably have to find the nearest 24/11 convenience store before he went on to scout any nearby heroes to torment. He could already see some of the neon lights and signs of the shopping district in the distance, so he began heading in the direction quickly. His objectives shifted rather quickly when he began hearing soft sounds filling the air. It sounded like music, intently, but it quickly morphed into singing as he walked further down the sidewalk. Eventually, it seemed like he was right on top of the noise, even though the buildings around him were still dark or shuttered. He circled the area with his gaze until he landed upon a fairly illuminated alley. Fairy lights were strung up across the brick, and to his surprise, with the source of the sound, out of pure curiosity, he followed the path of the lights to the center of the alleyway to a building Dabi had never quite seen before. It was an odd seeing a full 3-story building just sandwiched in between the two others, especially in an alleyway. I'm going to butcher this, by the way. Per calendar to the building was a sign in fancy golden strip that stated the name of the establishment. The Hideaway Cafe. Big glass windows showcased the inside of the building to the shadowed villain. There was a handful of patrons that were visible tables and standing at furthest back wall as the source of the noise he'd been hearing. All the patrons had their attention turned towards the singer. They were holding the mic in their hands, with a second person behind them playing the guitar and occasionally looking at the singer. Dabi had no clue what the song was. That type of music wasn't his style, but he was captivated nonetheless. He wasn't especially sure why he stood there as long as he did. It wasn't even I'm sorry, guys. Great performance, as the singer was just standing there and occasionally swaying back and forth. The song soon ended and was chased by the clapping of the restaurant patrons. Dabi waited a moment to see if the singing would continue, although it seemed he arrived at the end of the set, as the singer was only speaking into the microphone. Now the guitarists behind them began to pack up their materials. Maybe I'll come back here sometime, Dabi thought, before returning to his intentional route towards the convenience store. It wasn't for a couple of weeks that Dabi went back on that and found himself at the cafe again. At this point, he was a solidable member of the League of Villains, which only grew in members since his initial introduction. Thankfully, in his opinion, a majority of these members were adults, especially erratic men like Compress and Twice, stain-obsessed killers like Spinner Mag, who Dabi truthfully didn't know even about to say much else about her, and actual manics like Muscular and Moonfish. Nonetheless, he still had to accept the additions of another child, even younger than Toga, a kid who called himself Mustard. No matter the odd group of people he was now accompanied with, he managed to make his way to an interesting leadership role in their little upcoming attack on the UA Hero students. Despite the increased responsibility to plan for this said attack, he found himself slipping away from the hideout for the evening to go somewhere else. And, of course, his feet began leading him in that same direction that the cafe was. The place didn't leave his mind in the several weeks since he discovered it. The atmosphere of it all, the singing, the singer himself. He wanted to experience it again, so he managed to make his way back to it by pure memory. Greeting him, however, was a glaring dark building and a promote closed sign hanging at the front. Shit, he internally muttered to himself at the sight. He didn't really think about the possibility that it could be closed or that he really needed to know anything about the hours before he showed up again. Now he had to make this serious decision upon whether or not he should show up and undoubtedly piss Shigaraki or not. That was at last until he heard a voice come from the right of him. Excuse me, sir? Something wrong. He turned to look at the voice. Unshakably, it was the singer. He may have only had a far look of your appearance, but the hair was the same hair color and style that he'd seen before, and your shoes were the exact same. Oddly enough, Dabi could feel butterflies spiral in his stomach at the realization. Not at all. Are you waiting for the cafe to open? You continued to stutter before gesturing to the door with a jangling set of keys in your hand. I was, he lied. That hand freak is going to kick my ass, he thought to himself at that. Oh, great. You might need to wait a little, though. Our usual cook said he'd be a bit late, so if you were hoping to get any food, I'm not really any help, you explained. What about a drink? He asked. Oh, of course. I can do that. Just give me a moment to clean up. You once again gestured with the keys to indicate you needed to unlock the door. He moved over to the side to allow you a moment to open the door. He could tell you were hesitant of him. Even in the full world of odd quirks, people were still appreciative of the guy with large... impressive, basically scared of the guy with large scars and staple piercings. Or it could have been his dark clothes and overall suspicious appearance standing in front of the closed building. You can come in if you like. You finally came back towards the front door. It had taken you only a couple minutes, but the cafe looked as it did the first time he saw it, with the exception of the other people. Fairy lights illuminating everywhere and around, and the sign on the front had switched on to saying open. Much like the outside, the interior was small. There was like a handful of booths, tables to the left wall, which was exposed to brick. Mausoleum tables were around the rest of the center area. The right side had a couple of bar seats. Dabi chose to sit at the bar. He might as well get drunk if he's going to spend his time here, even though the effects of the alcohol were quickly canceled by his quirk. It's been a bit since I've handled the bar, but I could probably make you something. You spoke to him as you made your way behind the bar. You're a bartender? Dabi asked as he looked over the menu. There was a small illumination menu before him. He then chose to look towards the chalkboard to list all the drinks from above you. A long time ago. It was my first job, actually. Your hesitation seemed to slowly melting away from the question. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. What's in all the drinks is listed that on the smaller menu right there. He mumbled and looked for the drink that sounded the most interesting. What's the Incredible 7? Oh, that's one of my favorites. It's kind of tastes like spiked 7-Up, you explained. I'll get that, he agreed. He nodded and got to work grabbing bottles and various cans to mix together. So, what brings you here tonight? I don't think I've seen you here before, he began speaking. You know, every customer that comes here, Dabi teased. Well, more or less. We aren't exactly the most easy to find place, especially there's constant regulars or even a certain type of person that comes in here. You don't especially fit that bar, he explained. I came by this place before. You were singing, I'm pretty sure, he replied. You completely paused your actions of making the drink as it stared at him in what must have been disbelief as your face slowly flustered red. Seriously? You heard that? That was the worst. It wasn't that bad, Dabi replied. He internally cringed after giving that compliment. He should have already drank before he was complaining of complimenting people like that. Well, thanks, but it wasn't planned at all. We had a couple of performers and one of them canceled. I'm pretty sure she was just wasted, but whatever. So all the staff was telling me to go up and perform in her place, and I almost passed out. He ranted before placing the glass before him. It wasn't anything too fancy, just a small drink in a claret glass. It was interesting lime green color, and as Dabi took a sip, it held up so much its spiked 7-Up. You should sing more often. I'd come back to see it, he responds. Thanks again. I hardly have the confidence to do that again. We have other great musicians come in here all the time, though. The next performance is this Saturday. If you want to see that, you offered. I'll see. He'd really only come back for the opportunity to talk to you again. I have a busy schedule sometimes. You went in response before the ringing of the bell from the front door opening and closing distracted you. Dabi looked over to see that a new set of patrons had entered, much to his annoyance. Let me know if you need anything else, but I'll be handing others for a moment, you said, heading off to handle the people who just entered. He continued to slip the drink while looking around the area for anything to pay attention to instead of listening to whatever the conversation he held with the couple that sat themselves at a booth. There was a TV in the corner of the bar that he somehow managed to miss entirely. Immediately, it was left on the news channel, and the volume appeared to be turned completely off as it displayed whatever the report was on. Of course, it was on stain, based on the images of the killer and the captions. He became far too familiar with the name of Moffats and the killers of the League members. Actually, he knew the consideration amount of his history as well from the various times he's listened to Toga info dump about the man. It was no wonder so many people were so obsessed with this especially when these news reporters were still running after his arrest over a month ago. It's awful, isn't it? Your voice came from his left as you approached him. Obviously, you noticed his attention on the TV. Yeah, he decided not to add anything else about the hero killer. At the end of the day, no matter his annoyance towards the paparazzi villain, he was no better in the eyes of a citizen like yourself. Well, enough of that depressing stuff. Usually I don't leave the channel on the news very long unless you really want to watch it, you asked. No, I've seen enough shit around that guy. He laughed at his comment before grabbing the remote and changing it to some sort of soft music while turning up the volume. Oh, I don't think I introduced myself to you. I'm Lin Yin. We don't usually do name tags here. He turned towards him again. They sure are talkative, Dabi thought as he complained which name to give you in response. I'm Dabi, he chose to respond. Well, I hope to see you around here more often, Dabi. Same here,